Oh, the State of Purple podcast. Jack Day, AJ Mansour. Happy Halloween. Jack, where's your costume, man?
I do not have one on. I was dressed on Saturday. Pretty easy costume, but I was Tim the Tool Man, and my fiance was Wilson from
Nice. There
Home
you go.
Improvement, so.
I got roped into, well, not roped in. I was happy to volunteer to be Bowser, as our family is dressing up as Mario, Luigi,
I love it.
Princess Peach, and Bowser. And the Bowser costume, it's pretty sick if I do say so myself. Check that out. That's right there. And check this out, too. Here. Where is it? Got my inflatable turtle shell for my back. It was pretty sweet. Pretty sick. We're excited. My friends at HalloweenCostumes.com have all of the goods for your Halloween. So this is perfect, man. Happy Halloween. Happy Minnesota Vikings Victory Monday, the 6th Victory Monday of the short season. The Minnesota Vikings defeated the Arizona Cardinals 34-26 and moved on to 6-1. Jack, how did you take in the game? Where were you? Were you in enemy territory again?
I was in Wisconsin, so it was no victory laps today, but it didn't feel quite as good doing the victory lap when the Packers still had to play, which it was. I think I speak for the state of Minnesota that one was a fun one to watch as well.
I know you probably weren't still there in Wisconsin when the Packers game wrapped up, but sentiments from your dad, who's a Vikings fan but lives in Wisconsin, what's it like over there right now?
It's messy. I think the neighborhood, I think a lot of the neighborhood is still Vikings fans, but there are some Packers fans, and I think they're slightly starting to get, I don't know if annoyed is the right word or necessarily pissed. I think it's mostly a fun rivalry, but I can't imagine being a Packers fan hearing him. It's a science. I tell you, blowing the actual horn. He has a vintage Vikings horn.
All right.
And blowing it to the point where the entire neighborhood can hear it. It's an art that not many people have conquered, and he has conquered that. So like I said, I can't imagine it's fun being a Packers fan right now and hearing that loud, obnoxious horn every Sunday when the Vikings win.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 50 years of them doing that to us, more than that. I mean,
True.
I think we owe them a few, but we'll enjoy it while we can. Jack, I'd be remiss to go any further without mentioning our sponsor for today's show, SodaStick and SodaStick.com. We both got our hats on. It looks like you got one of the T-shirts on. Even you can get Minnesota. Look at that one.
Fitting today.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about that as well. But you can get your Minnesota sports-inspired goods at sodastick.com and take 15% off right now with the promo code KFAN. So when you check out, throw that promo code KFAN in the checkout, in the promo code space, and you'll get 15% off your order at sodastick.com. Thanks for supporting the State of Purple podcast and Minnesota Vikings coverage on KFAN. Jack, the Vikings did win 34-26. It wasn't a perfect game. It went down to the wire, as we always do. There's an opportunity for the other team to get in the game, if not come back to tie the game. The 8-point victory was a little dicey. We'll start right there because of the shirt that you have on, the Land of 10,000 Missed Kicks t-shirt. Greg Joseph gets I don't even know if you can say he got his field goal blocked. He kicked it right into the face of one of the defenders for the Cardinals because he had to get it so low. He's really struggling from 50 plus, but the bigger issue might be these extra points. I think he's missed 3 extra points on the season, and this is the second time for sure, maybe all 3 of them. I don't even remember what the first one was, but the last 2 have impacted the game in such a way that it has caused the final minutes of a game to be within reach for the opposition when it shouldn't be. It could have been a 2-possession game. We could have cruised down the final seconds of the game, but instead we had to sweat this thing out. And thankfully the Cardinals don't know how to do clock management like we used to not know how to do, and didn't have any timeouts. But Greg Joseph, it feels like it's a big problem. Would you agree?
I think it's a huge problem. I think the problem is negated a little bit because the Vikings are winning. But if you go back a year ago when he was doing the same thing, like that, we were kind of getting our hopes up, and I'd say kind of because we're Minnesota sports fan. The shirt is a shirt for a reason, but it was a problem last year. And then all throughout training camp, we heard, hey, Greg Joseph went 8 for 9 today on field goals, or 9 for 10, and he was lights out from 50 yards. And throughout the course of the first 7 games of the season, it's been atrocious. Dustin Baker tweeted something out earlier. He's making 64.3% of his field goals, which ranks dead last in all the NFL. And it's brutal. I want to act surprised. I really do, but I'm not. And it's a bummer because I think in the long run, we know this as Vikings followers, lifelong Vikings followers. We know how much this can hurt if the team is good enough to make some sort of run in the playoffs and it comes down to a field goal. I don't know. There's going to be a lot of heart attacks that are going to happen in the state of Minnesota. I can promise you that. And it's not good. And quite frankly, I don't want to say I'd be surprised about this, but I have a feeling that the Vikings new front office and Quasito Fomensa, they're going to have to try to do something, whether that's bring in a practice squad kicker to kind of create some sort of spark of competition. But quite frankly, it hasn't been good enough. And it's not just this game. It's kind of been throughout the entire course of the season.
Well, you don't usually see kickers traded, but trade deadline is this week. So you have some opportunities there to either shuffle your lineup or go find somebody to do that. But the Vikings are also rumored in a bunch of trade situations. We'll talk about that a little later too, Jack. But you talk about the kicking game. Obviously, Minnesotans are just conditioned to worry about the kicking game and worry about special teams. We thought we had moved past that. The punting game is doing pretty well. The kicking game early in the season was doing well. But as of late, I mean, I think we're to a point, Jack, where we're about ready to cut bait. And you kind of alluded to it, and the new management trying to figure out something to do here. But when you talk about extra points, there's this thought that, from 50 plus, Greg Joseph has been terrible, but anywhere inside there, he's been great. Well, last time I checked, the extra point is within, that realm inside 50 yards. What is it, like 32, 29, something like that? It should be a chip shot. It should be a gimme, and it just isn't. And those ones aren't getting blocked either. He's had some of the 50-yarders get blocked because he has to kick it low and get it, give it a little extra oomph to get there. These extra points aren't getting blocked. They're like, I don't know how it is because he's doinking them. Do you know how wide a goalpost is?
I do not, off the top of my head.
I'm going to guess it's 10 yards. It's something like that. 10 yards wide, 7 yards wide, whatever it is. Super wide. And he has the audacity to multiple times now hit the 6-inch upright, just solid. Not even to a point where it goes off the angle and goes in or goes out. It just goes straight back. I mean, he's hitting it right on the bullseye. And if he had that accuracy to do that, Chill Tate in the chat saying it's from 33 yards. It's a gimme, right? But he's hitting this goalpost, just doinking it, just loud, super loud. You could hear it on the TV. Rosen was sitting next to me. He wasn't even watching. He heard the noise. He heard the noise and whooped up his head. And he was like, what was that? And I said, he missed it. He missed it. You have, again, that opportunity there to really do something. And this is going to bite them in the butt if they don't make a move. So I'm going to predict, Jack, before the Vikings take the field next, there is at least a kicker brought in. It sounds like you're on that same string. I don't know if they're going to necessarily leapfrog Greg Joseph to take the starting spot, but at the very least, put a little pressure on him, like you said.
Yeah, I think you have to. And going back to what you were saying about the chip shots, it doesn't feel like with what he did from 50 yards, where he kicked it as hard as he possibly could, and it went off the face mask of a Cardinals player. It seems like he's doing the same thing for extra points. Like he smacked that kick. Like you said, it hit the upright so hard, and
about to knock it over.
From the TV angle, I almost thought he hit it so like at an angle so hard that it almost looked like it bounced in too, because it kind of bounced across, and obviously that wasn't the case. But yeah, I agree with you. I think whether or not it is just a practice squad player, or if it is, and if it does end up meaning Greg Joseph loses his job, I don't think there's there shouldn't be that much room for error where a kicker's making 64% of his field goals. And I think we're a little bit used to kind of pulling the trigger quicker than we should have, because I think there's a lot of Vikings fans that would be fairly happy if Daniel Carlson was still here instead of Greg Joseph. So I don't know if panicking immediately and pushing him out is necessarily the right move, but if you can find a kicker that's going to come in and be better, I don't see a reason for not doing that.
I'm fighting off a sneeze right now, so I apologize if I have to step away for a second. But this isn't you mentioned Daniel Carlson, and people are a little gun shy on both sides of this, right? They're afraid to get rid of a kicker too soon and let him go have success elsewhere because of Daniel Carlson. This isn't Greg Joseph's first rodeo. I mean, we know what we have with him. He struggled last year. He struggled this year. You have a team that, whatever you want to call it, however good you actually think they are, they're shaping up to have a high seed in the playoffs if this trend continues. Now, it doesn't necessarily happen that way. There's some tough games coming up. But if this trend continues, they're going to have a high seed, potentially, push for a bye, if not have home games. And these kicks, every single one of these scenarios is going to matter, not only for the regular season games as you're fighting for seedings heading into the playoffs, but for sure into the playoffs. And if we saw it with Blair Walsh had a stellar rookie season, and then he had to kind of wavered after that. And he carried that sort of confidence with him into the future, into those playoff games, and it impacted him. You can't compare those two one for one. They're not the same person. They don't have the same mentality, but you do know the mindset of a kicker, at least, is their memory does exist. Like they don't forget. They have high pressure moments, and they're going to forget. They will remember what happened this one time or that other time, or it goes both ways. But it's going to cost them games if they're squeaking these games out like they are, and if they're continue to not fully play to their full potential. These kicks, every single one, whether it's a 1-pointer or a 3-pointer, is going to matter.
Yeah, I agree, and I think we've spent the first 12 minutes of the show now talking about kicking, which we have to. But there were some good things that we can talk about from this game as well. And I think I said this, so in my dad's neighborhood, there's another group of Vikings fans that have also started doing victory laps, and they came to my dad's house after the game yesterday. And I said this to my dad, and he relayed it to them, and they didn't really agree with me. So I wanted to get your take on how you felt during this game, because I don't know if the tides are turning and I'm just starting to have higher expectations for Kevin O'Connell and his game plans, but this game didn't feel as close as some of the other ones. It felt like the Vikings were the better team. I know Kyler Murray kind of essentially shredded the Vikings defense in terms of yardage, and they put up some points, but it still just felt like the Vikings had the upper hand. They were actually taking advantage of the momentum that was given to them when scoring points, instead of trying to kick for field goals after muff punts and stuff like that. But it just felt like the Vikings had control of this game. And I wanted to ask you about that and kind of tie it in with this. From the TV broadcast perspective, it seemed as if the stadium was electric. And I don't know if it was with you being in the stadium, if it felt like that as well. I don't know if it was just if Jared Allen riding out on a horse brought some special juice into that stadium, but wanted to get your thoughts on that, kind of how you felt in terms of comfortability throughout this game, and then kind of the juice that was brought from the fans at US Bank Stadium.
Yeah, so my perspective at the games is I typically have headphones on because I'm listening to the broadcast for little nuggets, whatever. Obviously, listening to PA's play-by-play, but I usually have headphones on, so I don't always get the best sense of how loud it is in that building. Clearly, it was loud. The place was rocking. The doors were also open, and I don't know what impact that has on audio, if that lets some escape or if it funnels it up in a weird way. But here's how I can tell you that I know it was louder than typical games or earlier games this season. There were multiple times where there were miscommunications amongst the referees about whether a timeout was called from the sideline or not, to the point where they had to basically replay a bunch of plays because they couldn't hear the whistle from whoever that official was on the sideline blowing the whistle when they called a timeout. That clearly tells you that it's a loud stadium. The Cardinals expected that. They came in with some semblance of a silent count, where the left guard is the one who's looking at Kyler Murray until he does the little leg kick to let him know he's ready. He taps the center. The center does this weird thing with his head where he goes, "Rah, rah," and jacks his head up and then hikes the ball. that's all timing stuff so that they don't have to worry about the sound, the noise, and the level of excitement from the fans. But clearly, because of the way that it played out, from the officiating, the way that the Cardinals had to change their game plan, it was louder, and that's only going to carry into this season as they continue to have success. People continue to say, okay, maybe there is something special here. It's sold out every week, so they're not going to get many more people in there. They'll do standing room only stuff, but people are getting loud. And when you hand all 60,000 people a fake mullet, oh, that's what I should have worn. Got a fake mullet on your chair. You have the ability then to give people just a little more opportunity to kick back, to yell out, to act out, and they definitely did this week.
So how did you feel in terms of it? Obviously, still a one-score game, but did you have that feeling, the same feeling that I had, that it just, like I said, I don't know if it was me just kind of my heart getting used to this style of play, or if the Vikings really were in control for the majority of the game?
Okay, so it felt like they were in control the entire game. If you were using that terminology, they were being relatively consistent. They were able to score. They were moving the ball on long drives, doing the things that they needed to do. Now, what always has me nervous is quarterbacks like Kyler Murray, who can just break a pocket and extend a drive that should have been it was a third and long multiple times, and then he's able to just kind of scoot out there. The cornerbacks can't come up on him because then they're going to leave a receiver wide open, and he's able to get big chunk yardage, 9 yards, 10 yards, 15 yards at a time, to extend drives. Now, maybe after he got that first down, the drive stalled. So that happened a couple times. That felt like you were in control. The defense was stepping up. But again, whenever you have that kind of a dynamic threat, you have DeAndre Hopkins, who just seems to get open, right? Whether he's a deep threat and an underneath threat. So you have him running a pattern down the outside where he looks like he's streaking and then he stops. How do you defend that? I mean, you have to respect the deep game there, but you also need to be able to try and cover him short, and you just can't do both in certain scenarios. So with DeAndre seemingly getting whatever he wanted, with Kyler having the ability to just squeak out and extend a drive, yeah, I was worried. There was this, we've controlled this game, but this mentality that we all have as Minnesotans, that this is how it's going to happen, right? They're going to extend a drive in the final 2 minutes with Kyler's legs, and then they're going to get DeAndre Hopkins in the end zone to win it. That's what we all thought was going to happen. And honestly, it was kind of the opposite, right? They finally, on that last drive, found a way to bottle Kyler up when he tried to move and extend. And Za'Darius got for sure that one sack on the penultimate play. And I don't know if they counted that last play as a sack or what they counted it, but they put so much pressure on Kyler that he lost his balance, was falling all over the place, and then the clock expired. So I think that they're piecing this thing together, again, slower than we all want it to be, but it did feel comfortable, but still dangerous, if that makes sense.
One last question, then we can kind of get to the fun stuff, if you will, about this. But this is something that I noticed. I want to say it was 2 or 3 times, and the broadcast group actually brought it up once too, because it confused them. And again, this goes back to kind of what you were saying about the refs kind of having some confusion throughout the game. But it wasn't just the noise. Like I counted at least 2. Someone else told me 3, and then someone else told me it was just the one that the broadcast crew was talking about. But there were, in my eyes, there was 2 times where I was like, okay, first down, let's go. And then I looked at the bar under the TV, and it was 3rd and 1.5, like farther away than it looked like. I think the one that I'm thinking of was Justin Jefferson, where it looked like he dove and he was clearly over the marker, and they backed it up to 3rd and 1. And that was confusing. They talked about that. Was that brought up at all in the press box or talked about?
Yeah, Rosen was sitting next to me again. We were discussing it back and forth. There was for sure an early one, I believe, probably first quarter, where Kirk Cousins was scrambling, and he dove for the first down. And to the naked eye, it looked like he was a yard, maybe 2 past it. And again, you got to give credit to the refs for some of the things that they do, right? As much guff as we give them, and heck, we raise when they make a bad call, you got to understand sometimes they make some really good calls, and I don't know how they saw it, because again, watching it on the field, watching it on the first replay, and then you get that second replay, which is one angle that shows that Kirk's knee was down first. His knee just dragged down, and then his body continued forward momentum, and before his top half flopped to the ground, he was 3 yards further. So that one was actually correct. Now the Jefferson one, I remember it happening. I don't remember seeing the replay on it, but yeah, there were multiple times where you have a couple different situations where sometimes they went in and even adjusted it. There was one for the Cardinals too, so it went both ways, where they had the ball placed, let's say the 39-yard line, and then they got set, they were ready to go, whistles blew, they went up and they moved it back to the 38. So there was just some confusion. It was a weird deal. You can't blame it all on the noise. The refs were just not on top of their game either. Thankfully, it didn't impact the game in the sense of like determining the winner, but it was a weird scenario that there were a couple times, and I have no idea in the hierarchy of officiating crews where this one falls. But they didn't have their best game yesterday either. So that was an astute observation, and it was present and multiple facets of the game. I'm going to pop into the chat real quick because I got to ban a couple people because we're getting spammed right now. But let me get rid of that guy. Let me get rid of this guy. If you are watching live, throw some comments in the chat. Let us know what you thought of the game. I got a couple ones here. Brendan Kennedy wants to know how everyone's doing on a Victory Monday. Jack, how you feeling on Victory Monday?
I'm feeling good. The Vikings are 6-1, and like I said, that was kind of a game that it just felt like things are starting to come together. Again, it wasn't perfect by any means. I don't think we've had a perfect game to watch this year yet, and I think there's still a lot of room for growth. And Kevin O'Connell actually mentioned something in his post-game, not press conference, in his post-game speech to the team, and he's like, we know that we can be better. He said that he took accountability. He said, I can be better. And all 53 men in this locker room believe that they have to be better than what they played like today. And at the end of the day, they're still 6-1. So I think Vikings fans, that little bit of extra juice that kind of went into the stadium yesterday, I think we're starting to finally, I don't want to say comfortable, because you can never be comfortable with this team, but I think we're starting to learn each week that the Vikings are a good football team. I don't know if we're ready to say that they're a great football team, but there's no reason in my mind that I don't think this should be a higher seed playoff team, especially with how the NFC North is starting to shape up. And if the Vikings can go into Washington and get to 7-1, they're going to have possibly a game flexed that next week. But that might be the first game that we're sitting and talking about pregame that we're going to be a little bit more uncomfortable about when they go into Buffalo. But still got another one to go into Washington this week. And like I said, I'm feeling good. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I got people commenting and giving us kudos in the chat. Look at this one right here. Richard wants to know where we got our hats. If you want to see what the front of the hat looks like, you can see mine. If you want to see what the back of the hat looks like, look at this guy right here. Jack's got the back on. These are Soda Stick hats. So this is our sponsor. You can get it for 15% off sodastick.com if you like this hat. It's pretty slick, the skull hat. I'm feeling good, Jack, and I'm feeling good about a couple things, and we'll transition this into the second half here. I'm feeling good about the way that Zadarius Smith is playing right now. Holy smokes, did that guy ball out yesterday?
Yeah, 3 sacks, and I think I heard this
pass
properly on the pregame broadcast. I was listening a little bit on my way over to my dad's. I think they said the Cardinals were without 3/5 of their offensive line, I believe.
The whole left side, yeah.
You can kind of say, hey, Zadarius Smith, you're supposed to do that, but yet he is supposed to do that, and he is doing it. So I think that's huge. He's getting pressure. I think Danielle Hunter also had a sack. I think Harrison Phillips was maybe in on one as well, but Zadarius Smith kind of stole the show. And talking about the juice that I was talking about, he takes that a step further, because when he gets a sack, he knows to kind of keep that momentum, and he gets the stadium juiced up. And I don't think – I'm not saying there's not a lot of players on the Vikings that are like that, because I don't think that's necessarily true, but he goes above and beyond to kind of get that place going, and I love that. So I agree with you. Zadarius Smith has been the best free agent signing that the Vikings have had this year, last couple of years maybe, and I think it's good news because we still haven't seen the Danielle Hunter of old yet either. And if that clicks, this front four is going to be pretty scary.
Right, and hopefully, as you start to see Zadarius continue to get success, he gets a little extra attention to open some things up for Danielle Hunter to maybe get his game going a little bit. And then when you have them on both sides, that's exactly what we pictured when this was brought together. Dalvin Cook, his first 100-yard game of the season. What do you think of his game?
Yeah, I think Dalvin Cook, if I had to give a game ball for this game, I think it goes to Dalvin Cook. I think he needed a game like this, and it hasn't been necessarily that Dalvin Cook has been bad. I don't think that's the case, but Dalvin Cook had his blow-up game. It wasn't anything insane. I think he had like an additional 30, 40. I don't have the numbers written down in front of me. He had a couple bigger catches through the air as well, and he seems – one of the touchdowns he scored, or the rush, I think it was his rushing touchdown that he scored. He's back to slippery Delvin, where he can be inside the tackles, but he's not. He's finding the holes to hit properly, and I think it's a good thing. It's probably a little bit of a testament to the offensive line performing well as well. We can give them a little bit of credit, although that's not my biggest cup of tea is giving credit to the offensive line. I've had a hard time with that over the last decade of watching Vikings football, but it wasn't just Dalvin Cook on the ground. We can't stop there. Michael Vick was running all over. I mean, Kirk Cousins was running all over the place yesterday, and that was funny. Whenever we get to see Kirk Cousins scramble for, I'd say 5+ yards. I think it's entertainment. And when he gets into the end zone, he actually mentioned something in his post-game presser as well, that the guys are kind of a little bit more juiced about that touchdown than they are the other ones, because they don't get to see that too often. And on top of that, Alexander Madison was averaging 8 yards per carry too. So the Vikings were dicing their defense on the ground. Kirk wasn't necessarily spectacular through the air, but he wasn't awful either. And I think that's another thing that we can talk about too, is we talk about and joke about Kirk Cousins and Kirk Tober and all of this stuff, but the Vikings are 6-1, and I haven't compared the numbers. This would be something interesting that maybe I'll do this week before our later show this week, but I'd be really curious to see the stats for Kirk Cousins through his last 3 or 4 seasons, through the first 7 games compared to this year, because he's put up some really, really good stats in a Vikings uniform, and I don't necessarily think that's been the case this year, but the Vikings are still winning.
Right. Maybe he doesn't have to, right? I mean, that's an okay thing. Just to run through the points you made there, Dalvin Cook had a great game, had an opportunity, I think, for more on that long run where he could have cut to the right and he chose to cut to the left. And then after he cut to the left, he chose to try and run straight through Budda Baker. And it didn't work out. That run, it looked like he could have kept going and tried to outrun whoever it was on that right side. He had one guy to beat on that side, had an opportunity to make that even better. Alexander Madison, solid game. Kirk, it's funny because we talk about Kirk Cousins and we compare him to a baby giraffe or a baby deer sometimes, just kind of looking awkward and gangly as he tries to run. On that first one, the touchdown, I guess wasn't the first one. He had a bunch of runs, but the touchdown run, 17-yard touchdown run, he looked more athletic than I've ever seen him look. Dodging tackles, slipping around the corner, and then kicking it into 5th gear to dive for that end zone. And then like 4 plays later, he looked like the giraffe again. So, I mean, we're not going to rely on him to do that often, but you get him in the right spot. He said they even kind of schemed it and said this was a scenario where I could maybe see this opportunity coming, and he saw it and he took advantage of it. And I love, more than anything, he was very close to the sidelines there after he beat that last tackle right around the edge. And had an opportunity to step out of bounds, stay safe, step out of bounds, and he didn't take it. He turned it upfield and kicked it into 5th gear and really went for the touchdown. It was a mentality that I don't think we always see from Kirk, and he went after it. So love seeing that. Love seeing Dalvin. Love seeing Justin Jefferson. Let me read this for you real quick. Justin Jefferson hasn't scored a touchdown since week 1 when he had 2 touchdowns. But his last 4 weeks, 147 yards, 10 receptions. 12 receptions, 154 yards. 6 receptions, 107 yards. And then yesterday, 6 receptions with 98 yards. A gigantic asset to this team and a big role in the passing game. He's just not finding the end zone. But at that same point in time, I don't really care. Do you care? I mean, they're scoring enough points and they're winning these games.
I don't care, and I don't think he cares either. If this team is winning and his teammates are scoring touchdowns and they're continuing to find ways to win, that was a very, very quiet 6 for 98. I would not have guessed watching that game that Justin Jefferson was that close to another 100-yard game. And I think another thing that we saw yesterday, a little bit that I don't necessarily want to say, maybe it is safe to say that Adam Thielen kind of has taken that step back this year, but he's still a huge asset for this football team. And there was two plays in particular that I'm thinking of. There's one that was Thielen, and you might have had both of these up on TikTok as well, but there was one for Justin Jefferson and there's one for Adam Thielen, and both of them were contested where they had someone right in their back pocket and they went up and they got the football. And we're so accustomed to seeing that. We're used to that. And like, I'm not saying that hasn't been the case this year, but I feel like we haven't seen that enough. There's been some drops that maybe they shouldn't even be considered drops, but we're just so used to Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson coming down with the ball on plays like that
Right.
And we saw that happen yesterday. And neither throws were great by Kirk Cousins either. And they just kind of went up and took the football out of the air. And it just shows how vital it is having talented wide receivers along with a quarterback that can have his ups and downs. And I think we started to see that yesterday. And I think moving forward, we're going to have to continue to see that if this team's going to continue winning football games.
I think a couple things that stand out to me about why maybe we're not seeing those contested catches as much anymore. One is because people are getting open. You don't have contested catches when you're getting that wide open. The other one, though, is because Kirk is able to spread the ball around. I think he more so in years past felt that he had to force the ball to Adam or Justin or Adam or Diggs or whoever was in the picture. You had to get the ball to this guy or that guy because we didn't have any other options. But when your running game is working, when your tight ends are serviceable, and you have a guy like KJ Osborne, Jalen Reagor's got a couple big catches even. I mean, you have options out there so you can spread the ball out a little bit more. That helps everybody get open, but it also takes away the need to just force the ball into tight windows. So that's there. I want to quickly, Jack, talk about the defense, and then I want to talk about the trade deadline because there's some interesting talkers for this team and a bunch of things we just talked about with the offense and the wide receivers and the tight ends. Defensively, though, real quick, we talked about Zadarius Smith. Patrick Peterson played a great game. Jordan Hicks played a great game. These revenge games for those two former Cardinals. Tell me about that.
Yeah, that was awesome, and I wanted to say this. I'm glad you brought it up. I hope that Patrick Peterson can find that energy within him to play that way every single game moving forward, because I loved it. It was a little bit concerned at some points that there might be some yellow flags coming because he was getting he was running his mouth a little bit, and rightfully so. I think there were some other things that he said yesterday that weird things happen. We don't need to spend too much time talking about the stuff that happened with him when he was in Arizona, but he felt disrespected and he came out, I think it was 3 pass breakups. He predicted on his own podcast that he was going to have 2 interceptions. So it wasn't quite that good of a day, but I think you got to give him some credit for the 3 pass breakups. And Jordan Hicks, was he the one? I think Jordan Hicks had that big play at the end as well, or towards the end of the game. He had a big stop. I don't think anything shows up on the stat sheet for what he did as extremely spectacular, other than I think he had a handful of tackles in that big play. But and then going to the back half of the defense as well, Harrison Smith and Cam Bynum both had picks as well. And I noticed this. I don't know if you saw this live or if you saw the video, but there's a video of Harrison Smith when he got his interception, and right as he catches the ball, Patrick Peterson stops what he's doing and just starts dancing. I saw that for the first time this morning, and I absolutely love that. I think you might be muted.
Of course, I muted my microphone, of course. Yeah, it was super funny, and even better, the play, because Harrison tried to return it. He got tripped up, caught his balance, and then went for another 3 or 4 yards. Didn't have a whole lot of impact, but the whole return, if you will, probably took 6-7 seconds. And I swear to you, you can't see it on the replay, but Patrick Peterson was dancing the whole time because this is an opportunity where you see other Vikings come back into the picture because they're blocking for Harrison Smith, trying to get him further. And Peterson was the closest guy to him and was nowhere to be seen. So I think that this was I think it was a Fortnite emote dance where he just sat there for 5, 6, 7 seconds, looking at the Cardinal sideline, because I think he was facing that direction too, just doing this silly little dance. But that pass by Kyler was terrible. I know he got rushed and maybe even got hit, but it was about 10 yards underthrown, and Harrison came from the other side of the field and just crossed over and grabbed it. So funny scenario, good interception game, kind of shifting moment there. It was good to see. Jack, one final thing. We're at 34 minutes. We'll wrap up pretty quick here, but the trade deadline coming up. There's been a lot of talk about the Minnesota Vikings surrounding mainly pass catching options, tight ends and wide receivers. A lot of wide receiver names that are being thrown about have been tied to the Minnesota Vikings. Nothing necessarily official, but we've heard Chase Claypool, we've heard Odell Beckham, we've heard a bunch of different scenarios of these names that are out there on teams that are maybe, Jerry Jeudy, I think, was even another one, but then the Broncos won this weekend. I feel as if this regime is working hard to try and improve this roster. Doesn't mean it always comes together. You have to have a partner to dance with and have to have the right deal. But do you get the sense that they are looking hard at least and probably trying to make a move before this deadline comes?
Yeah, we know it very well in this state that there's truth to all rumors. So quote an old friend of Minnesota
I love it.
Vikings fans. But I think they're definitely, I mean, they're doing their due diligence and they're trying to make this team better. And they're, like you said, there has to be two willing participants for a trade to happen. And they're also, Rob Brzezinski's going to have some work cut out for himself as well. Because I want to say the Vikings have like 1 point something. I don't know the exact number, but it's only a little bit over $1 million.
I think it was a little under last I checked, unless they did something recently.
Either way, they need to find some cap space, especially if they're going to try to find money to sign someone like Odell Beckham Jr. I think when the rumors were swirling, if I had to pick a favorite out of the group, I would love Jerry Jeudy in purple. And you're already trying to get all the receivers from that 2020 class anyway, so you might as well add another one. But I like it because I think you'd agree with me on this. If you can throw in another young and up-and-coming, very talented wide receiver in Jerry Jeudy, I'm not the biggest fan of Chase Claypool. I think I'd prefer signing Odell Beckham Jr. over Claypool. I think that's kind of where my order ranks. But the fact that they're trying to bring in another pass catcher, I think it's showing us a couple things. I think going back to what I said about Adam Thielen, I think they're also starting to realize that he can be a valuable asset to this team, but maybe not in quite the same way that he used to be, because he might not be that same player. But if you can have a wide receiver core with, let's say Jerry Jeudy, for example, if Jerry Jeudy is the 2 wide receiver with Justin Jefferson as the 1, and that bumps Adam Thielen to 3 and KJ Osborne to wide receiver 4, that is an absolute stacked wide receiver room. And like you said, it might not happen, but the fact that the Vikings are at least kicking the tires and kind of trying to see what they might be able to get, I think it shows that how hard this new front office is willing to work to build a winning culture.
Yeah, and like you said, I think it is 850,000 that they have in cap space right now. So they're going to have to get creative in some sense. And when you do that, you transfer part of contracts into signing bonuses and guaranteed money and extend people. And there's some questions about who you could do that with, right? You don't necessarily want to do that with Danielle Hunter right now. You've got some older players on the back end that you don't necessarily want to extend them long term on the back end of the defense. That is, we've talked about Eric Kendricks being a possibility there. We've talked about I'm even comfortable, and I know they've done this a couple times, but I think I'm at a point where I'm comfortable even talking Kirk's contract and getting a little creative there to maybe loosen some money. You have some options, right? We don't call Rob Brzezinski the salary cap wizard for nothing. I mean, he has done some crazy things that we just didn't think there was any opportunity to before. And if anyone can get it done, I have faith that he's going to make it work to help improve this team. But looming on the horizon, you're also going to have to get ready for this gigantic contract for Justin Jefferson that is coming right around the corner too. So just some things to consider, but I do think that if they do make some improvements, it's going to be on the offensive side of the football. A pass catching option, whether that's an improvement at tight end, might be a cheaper option to do that with. Or those wide receivers, like you mentioned there. Do you think they're looking? And let me rephrase that. If they were looking to do something on defense, what position might they be looking at? You think?
I'm dealing with some sinuses stuff as well this morning. Was trying to fight out a sneeze there. Yeah.
Sorry.
If I had to do something on the defensive side of the ball, I think at this point, I don't know if it would necessarily be trying to find a replacement outside of the facility, or if it would just be trying to start to get Andrew Booth on the field a little bit in the slot over Chandon Sullivan. I don't know. And it's weird because we've talked so much about this defense, and they're really, really, really testing that bend but don't break strategy that they've claimed to have. And so far it's working, but I think you can get a little bit better in the secondary. I think Chandon Sullivan had a fine game yesterday. I guess he had a couple nice plays. I'd have to go back and actually watch the all 22 to verify that. But throughout the first couple games of the season, he kind of struggled. And I think that's the biggest area. I love where they're at in terms of their safeties. I think Patrick Peterson and Cam Dancer have both earned starting jobs on this team. And then the front seven, you're not going to you're not going to take Eric Hendricks and Jordan Hicks out of the lineup right now, even though they're trying to find ways, which I think this should excite Vikings fans for the future of this team, not only the 6-1 start, but the future. They're really trying to find ways to get Brian Asamoah on the field, and that means he's doing something right that we're not seeing behind the scenes throughout practices and some of the stuff we are seeing on special teams. But to wrap that up and not go on for too much longer than I need to, I think the answer would be somewhere in the secondary, and I think I'd key in on that nickelback spot.
I like it. It'll be an exciting week. We'll pay attention. KFAN.com will have coverage of whatever's going on. Obviously, you can listen to KFAN on iHeartRadio or 100.3 in the Twin Cities as well. And then you can follow Jack on Twitter, Jack_H_day, and myself at AJ KFAN for all the late breaking news. Don't forget, too, you can get old episodes of the State of Purple podcast, new episodes of the State of Purple podcast by subscribing. Give us a follow and a subscription on iHeartRadio, iTunes, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. We are there, and we're there at least once, most likely 2 times a week, giving you some updates, previews, reviews, and opinions for the Minnesota Vikings. So, Jack, anything else burning a hole in your pocket you wanted to get out of your notebook before we call it a day here?
I don't think so. I hope you and the family have fun. Do you have carts to push the kids around in tonight for like a Mario Kart theme, or is it just Mario themed?
So the youngest, who was supposed to be Luigi, changed his mind like 3 days ago. So we got a Spider-Man costume. That's the backup, just in case we need to. That's what he prefers. So he's good there, but I'm going to try and convince him because we have like a Power Wheel, those little battery operated kids cars. I'm trying to get him convinced to drive that car and be like Luigi Mario Kart. And if you're familiar with, the Mario Kart 8, whether it was on the Wii U or with the Nintendo Switch, there's a meme of Luigi when he passes somebody and he gives him this mean evil eye as he looks by and he kind of like looks at him like, what are you doing? This kid could pull that off. He's got that sass. He's got that attitude that could really pull that off. So I don't know if it's going to happen. I have a feeling that he's going to be Spider-Man, but I'm going to charge that battery for that Power Wheel just in case. Because again, the wheels always help too. So we'll see.
I didn't think I'd be able to tie Mario and Luigi into a Vikings podcast, but some great news, weird news. Was not expecting to see this today. I don't know if you saw this on Twitter, but in the background of a live picture, I think it was Don from Fox tweeted this out, but it was Luigi Villain dressed up as Luigi and Josh Metellus dressed up as Mario, but walking into the stadium, and you heard that right, walking into the stadium in front of both of them is Vikings first-round pick Lewis Seen, which I was not expecting. That maybe I'm just very not like caught up in terms of like medical stuff, but that seems very fast for me, and that seems like great news.
Yeah, great news. I mean, clearly limping, probably in a boot or a cast of some sort, but no crutches. I mean, he was just walking. I remember seeing that as well. And I just, I love Luigi Villain as Luigi. But when your name is Luigi Villain, it's almost like Luigi Villain. You got to go Waluigi in my mind. You got to go Waluigi. But
that's purple too, right?
He was purple and yellow. Yes, that's exactly right. That would have been. I don't know that you can. Again, these guys are in the NFL. They can probably find a way to get a Waluigi costume, but it's not as easy as a regular Luigi costume. So. All good there. Jack, thank you very much. We'll let you get back to your busy day, and we'll keep soaking up this Victory Monday on the State of Purple podcast. For Jack Day, I'm AJ Mansour. This is the State of Purple podcast. Thank you to Soda Stick. Again, use that promo code KFAN to take 15% off. You got these hats right here. You got Jack's t-shirt, all sorts of Minnesota sports-inspired goods, 15% off with the promo code KFAN at sodastick.com. We'll see you later this week as we preview the Washington Commanders and the Minnesota Vikings.